Well, the Committee to Protect Journalists has released a statement following the incident, saying that this is another example of the high price journalists in Gaza are paying to cover the war so that the world can witness what is happening. It's calling for an independent investigation to determine if a war crime has been committed. We can now speak to Sherif Mansour, who's the MENA Program Coordinator at the Committee to Protect Journalists. He's joining us from Washington, D.C. Sherif Mansour, thanks for your time with us. First, what is your reaction to the way these journalists were targeted using a drone strike? And also, I mean, they were clearly wearing their flak jackets, their marked press, and they were in an area that was reportedly not a combat area.
Well, it's a horrific incident, and it shows the personal price those journalists continue to pay every day in order to do journalism, their work, gather news about what's happening for the world to see. And it's not the first or the second, it's the third time Al Jazeera journalists specifically have been targeted with these precise drone attacks. In December, against Samir Abu Daqqa, last month in January, against Hamza al-Dahdouh, and today, this thankfully did not lead to any of those journalists being killed, but we're hoping and praying for their recovery so they can receive the critical and immediate help they need. We are, of course, very alarmed, and we are calling for an independent, rapid, and transparent investigation because if these are targeted attacks, they are constituting war crimes.
I hear what you're saying about calling for an independent investigation, but, you know, how likely is that to happen? Because we've seen this happen before, and there's been no independent investigation into the killing of journalists.
Fortunately, before this war, we at the committee have documented at least 20 journalists killed, including Al Jazeera journalist Shireen Abu Akleh, which we classified as murder 2 years ago. And in all of the cases, the 20 cases, no journalists have been charged or held, no killer of journalists have been charged or held accountable. And this is why we called before this war for the record of impunity in the Israeli army killing of journalists, the standing and the long-standing record to face public scrutiny. And we called on international investigation and international media to be allowed immediately into Gaza. These are the things that I think will help uncover the truth and ensure Israel cannot hide any evidence of its violations as the International Court of Justice ordered.
And when you make such calls, what is the response that you get?
Well, we make those calls for all international and also U.S. allies, including the U.S. government, including European allies. We have called on them to ask for rapid investigation, and they have done so in the case of Issam Abdallah. Secretary Blinken have called for the results of the investigation in his case to come as soon as possible. But we've also asked for review of arms exports to Israel to ensure that the use of these arms are happening according to international law and U.S. law, including Leahy law, that makes sure that those arms are not used in human rights atrocities, including attacks against journalists. We've also called for them to pressure and call out Israeli army on the rules of engagement, to reform them so that they can stop disregarding things like press insignia and make sure that the investigation that they have done are transparent and rapid, but also if they are not done properly internationally, prosecuted, including in the International Criminal Court.
Right. Let me just finally ask you about another call that you've made now. CPG called for an independent investigation into the killing of another Al Jazeera journalist. You mentioned him a moment ago, Hamza al-Dahdouh, and cameraman Mustafa Thuraya. Can you let us know what the latest is on that?
Well, we have included them as part of at least a southern case among the 85 journalists that we have counted and confirmed that been killed on duty or doing journalism. Some of them, we have strong evidence that there is an Israeli army culpability, and that includes the 3 drone attacks that happened against Al Jazeera, but also precise and targeted attacks, including shelling to journalists' cars, their homes, even their families after receiving threats. And that has happened with another Al Jazeera journalist and others who have also lost families in Israeli bombardment. We're calling for all of these to be investigated, but prioritizing the ones that we see this culpability to make sure that the perpetrators are held accountable.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Sherif Mansour, thank you for speaking to us from DC.